By the time Sergeant Daniel Carter came home from war, his mother no longer recognized herself in the mirror. The woman who once raised him with warmth, laughter, and homemade apple pies now sat trembling in a dark upstairs bedroom, hiding bruises beneath oversized sweaters. And the person responsible? His own wife. But what Daniel discovered after returning home would expose a nightmare far worse than abuse. Because Emily Carter wasn't just hurting his mother. She had been secretly preparing to steal everything he owned. And when the truth exploded inside an American courtroom, the woman who thought she controlled everything lost it all in front of the entire town. The Soldier's Return. Cedar Grove, Texas. A quiet suburban town where everyone waved politely, mowed their lawns on Saturdays, and pretended bad things only happened somewhere else. The Carter family used to be admired there. Daniel Carter was the town hero, a decorated Army sergeant, disciplined, respectful, the kind of man neighbors trusted instantly. His mother, Helen Carter, was equally beloved. At 68 years old, Helen still baked cookies for neighborhood children and sent handwritten birthday cards to everyone she knew. Then Daniel married Emily. Beautiful, elegant, perfect smile, perfect makeup, perfect manners. At least in public. Because behind closed doors, Emily Carter was something else entirely. Before deployment, Daniel noticed small tensions between the two women. Tiny things. Emily rolling her eyes when Helen repeated stories, complaining about medical bills, getting irritated when Helen forgot where she placed items. But Daniel believed stress was normal in marriage. And Helen always defended Emily. "She's young," Helen would say softly. "Marriage takes adjustment." So when Daniel received overseas deployment orders, he left believing his wife and mother would take care of each other. He kissed Helen on the forehead before leaving. "I'll be home before Christmas, Mom." Then he kissed Emily. "Take care of her for me." Emily smiled sweetly. Of course. But the second Daniel disappeared from sight, that smile vanished. At first, Emily's cruelty came in whispers. "Do you really need the heater this high? You forgot again? You're becoming impossible." Then it became humiliation. Emily stopped letting Helen eat dinner downstairs. "The smell of old people medicine ruins my appetite." Helen quietly carried her plate upstairs every night. Alone. Then came isolation. Emily removed the family landline, controlled Helen's medication, told neighbors Helen was developing memory problems. Soon, fewer people visited. Fewer phone calls came. Helen's world became smaller every day. Exactly how Emily wanted it. One rainy evening, Helen accidentally shrank one of Emily's expensive sweaters in the laundry. Emily exploded. "You useless old woman." Helen immediately apologized. But Emily grabbed the sweater violently and shoved Helen backward into the kitchen counter. The impact cracked against Helen's ribs. Helen gasped in pain. Emily froze for a brief second. Not because she felt guilty. Because she realized something terrifying. She enjoyed the power. From that night forward, the abuse became physical. Daniel called every Sunday from overseas. And every Sunday, Helen lied. "I'm doing wonderful, sweetheart." Emily always stood nearby during the calls. Watching. Listening. Smiling. One night after the call ended, Helen quietly whispered, "Why are you doing this to me?" Emily slowly walked closer. Then crouched beside Helen's chair. Her voice became ice cold. "Because Daniel loves you more than me." Helen stared at her in shock. Emily's eyes darkened. "You know what it feels like living with a ghost from his past? Every story starts with, 'Mom used to.' Every memory includes you." "That's because I raised him," Helen replied weakly. Emily leaned closer. "And now I'm replacing you." Winter arrived early that year. The house grew colder. Literally. Emily began shutting off the heating upstairs to save money. Helen slept wearing gloves and 2 sweaters beneath blankets. Some nights, she cried silently from the pain in her joints. Other nights, She simply stared at Daniel's old childhood photos and prayed for his safe return. But one afternoon, everything became worse. Much worse. Helen overheard Emily speaking on the phone. "I'm telling you, once Daniel signs the insurance paperwork, everything transfers to me." Helen froze outside the bedroom door. "Insurance paperwork?" Emily continued laughing. "He trusts me completely. The house, savings, military benefits, all of it." Helen's blood ran cold. Emily wasn't just abusive. She was planning something. That evening, Helen secretly searched Daniel's office downstairs. Her hands trembled while opening drawers. Then she found it. Legal documents. Power of attorney forms. Bank transfer authorizations. And a life insurance policy worth nearly $2 million. Helen's heart pounded. Some forms already had Daniel's signature. Others didn't. But one thing terrified her most. Several signatures looked forged. Suddenly. "You snooping through our things now?" Helen jumped violently. Emily stood in the doorway. Smiling. But not kindly. Predatorially. I was cleaning," Helen stammered. Emily slowly approached. Then snatched the documents away. "You should have stayed in your room." Helen gathered courage. Daniel would never approve this. Emily's expression hardened instantly. "He doesn't need to." Then. Slap. Helen collapsed sideways against the desk. Emily leaned down calmly. "Nobody is going to believe an old woman with memory problems." That sentence shattered Helen completely. Because suddenly. She understood Emily's plan. Emily had been slowly convincing everyone Helen was mentally unstable. Neighbors, friends. Even Daniel during phone calls. Helen wasn't just being abused. She was being erased. 3 weeks before Christmas, Sergeant Daniel Carter finally boarded a military flight home. After 11 brutal months overseas, all he wanted was peace. Family, warm food, a quiet Christmas. During the flight, he replayed old voicemails from Helen. Her soft voice comforted him during combat more times than he could count. But something bothered him. Her recent calls sounded different. Smaller. Fearful. And Emily kept answering more frequently instead of Helen. Daniel tried pushing the feeling away. Until he landed. The house looked wrong immediately. Dark curtains, dead flowers near the porch, mail overflowing. Daniel frowned. Emily opened the door before he knocked. "Baby." She threw her arms around him dramatically. But Daniel noticed something instantly. "No, Helen. Where's Mom?" Emily hesitated. "She's resting." Daniel's instincts sharpened immediately. After years in combat, he learned one thing. Hesitation meant danger. He stepped inside. "Mom?" No response. Then he heard it. A faint crash upstairs. Daniel rushed toward the staircase. Emily grabbed his arm. "Wait." He pulled away instantly. The second he entered Helen's room, his entire world stopped. Helen sat on the floor beside the bed. Thin, pale, terrified. A purple bruise covered part of her cheek. Daniel stared in horror. "Mom?" Helen looked up slowly. The second she saw him, she burst into tears. Not gentle tears. Broken tears. The kind someone cries after surviving hell too long alone. Daniel dropped to his knees immediately. "What happened to you?" Helen tried speaking but couldn't. Then Daniel noticed something else. When he reached toward her shoulder, she flinched. Like she expected pain. That single movement nearly destroyed him. Behind him, Emily forced a nervous laugh. "She fell yesterday." "Shut up." Daniel's voice became dangerously calm. The room fell silent. He slowly stood. Every military instinct inside him was screaming now. Bruises, fear response. Malnourishment, isolation. Daniel had seen abuse victims before overseas. And now his own mother looked exactly like one. "You touched her." Emily panicked. "Daniel, you're overreacting. You touched my mother." This time his voice sounded colder. Deadlier. Emily stepped backward. You don't understand what I've dealt with. Daniel moved closer slowly. What exactly did you deal with? He asked quietly. An elderly woman loving her son? She manipulated you your entire life. Daniel's jaw tightened. Then Helen whispered weakly. She forged your papers. Everything stopped. Daniel turned slowly. What? Helen trembled. She's trying to take your money, your insurance. Emily's face lost all color. Daniel stared at his wife in disbelief. Then rage exploded behind his eyes. Tell me she's lying. Emily immediately cried. They were just precaution papers. Daniel grabbed the folder from the nearby drawer. He scanned the signatures. Then his military-trained attention noticed inconsistencies instantly. Dates wrong, initials mismatched, handwriting pressure uneven. Forgery. His own wife had been planning to steal from him while abusing his mother. Daniel looked at Emily like he no longer recognized her. How long? Emily broke. You were never home, she screamed. Everything was always about your mother or the army. Daniel's voice became terrifyingly quiet. So you tortured an old woman? She ruined our marriage. No, Daniel said coldly. You did. Then he pulled out his phone. Emily's breathing quickened. Who are you calling? The police. Emily lunged toward him desperately. Daniel, please. But he stepped away instantly. For the first time since marrying her. Daniel looked at Emily with complete disgust. You made my mother afraid to be touched. His eyes filled with tears. I can never forgive that. The police arrived within minutes. And this time, Emily's perfect image finally cracked. Officers photographed Helen's injuries, paramedics documented malnutrition, detectives collected forged paperwork. One officer quietly asked Helen, Ma'am, has this been happening for a long time? Helen looked down ashamed. Daniel immediately held her hand. You did nothing wrong, Mom. Helen finally broke down sobbing. And every tear made Daniel hate himself more. Because while he fought enemies overseas, the real monster had been living inside his own home. The story spread through Cedar Grove overnight. Nobody could believe it. Emily Carter, the elegant charity volunteer, the sophisticated military wife? But slowly, neighbors began remembering disturbing moments. Helen taking out trash alone during storms, bruises hidden beneath sleeves, Emily screaming through open windows. The illusion collapsed fast. And then came the biggest shock of all. Detectives discovered Emily had been communicating secretly with another man in Nevada. A convicted financial scammer. Together, they planned to manipulate Daniel's military benefits and life insurance accounts. If Daniel had died overseas, Emily would have inherited everything. The entire town erupted. Now this wasn't just abuse. It was betrayal at the highest level. 3 months later, the courtroom was packed. Half the town attended. News reporters stood outside. Emily entered wearing expensive clothes and fake humility. But nobody looked at her the same anymore. She looked nervous for the first time in her life. Then Daniel walked in beside Helen. The courtroom fell silent. Helen looked healthier now, stronger, alive again. And Daniel never left her side. During the trial, prosecutors revealed everything. Medical evidence, forgery analysis, financial records, photos of bruises. But the most devastating moment came unexpectedly. The prosecutor played an audio recording. Nobody knew it existed. Daniel looked confused. Then Helen whispered, "The baby monitor?" Months earlier, Emily had installed a monitoring device in Helen's room, claiming it was for safety. But Helen secretly learned how to record conversations from it. The courtroom speakers crackled. Then Emily's voice filled the room. Cold, cruel, inhuman. You're nothing but a burden. Nobody would care if you disappeared. When Daniel comes home, he'll believe me over you. The courtroom became completely silent. Several jurors looked horrified. Emily's attorney buried his face in his hands. And Daniel? Daniel looked shattered. Because hearing abuse described is one thing. Hearing your wife actually say it? That destroys something inside a man forever. Emily suddenly stood up screaming. She recorded me illegally. But the judge silenced her immediately. Sit down, Ms. Carter. Then came the final blow. The prosecutor displayed the forged insurance documents on a giant courtroom screen. Beside them appeared verified military signatures. The differences were obvious. The prosecutor looked directly at Emily. You weren't planning a future with Sergeant Carter, he said calmly. You were planning a payday. Emily's face collapsed. And for the first time, the entire town saw who she truly was. The verdict came quickly. Guilty. Elder abuse, fraud, forgery, financial exploitation. Helen closed her eyes and cried softly. Not from sadness. Relief. Years of fear finally ended in that single moment. Meanwhile, Emily sat frozen as reality crashed down around her. When officers approached to escort her away, she suddenly turned toward Daniel desperately. Please, don't let them take me. Daniel stared at her silently for several seconds. Then he spoke words nobody in the courtroom would ever forget. The woman I loved died the day my mother became afraid of human touch. Emily broke down sobbing. But Daniel simply turned away. Done forever. 6 months later, spring returned to Cedar Grove. And so did peace. Helen laughed more now, cooked again, gardened again. The bruises faded slowly. But the fear took longer. Some nights she still startled awake from nightmares. And every single time, Daniel was there. One evening while repairing the porch, Daniel quietly admitted, I should have seen it sooner. Helen shook her head immediately. No, evil people survive because they hide well. Daniel sat beside her silently. Then Helen smiled softly. You came home when I needed you most. Daniel's eyes watered. But I left you alone with her. Helen grabbed his hand gently. You came back. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Daniel whispered. Never again. That Christmas, the Carter home looked alive once more. Warm lights, fresh pie cooling near the window, music playing softly. Helen placed a family photo on the fireplace mantel. A picture of Daniel as a little boy wearing a toy soldier uniform beside his smiling mother. Daniel noticed it immediately. You kept this? Helen laughed softly. Of course. Daniel stared at the photo quietly. Then he wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Outside, snow began falling gently across Cedar Grove. And inside the house, for the first time in years, it truly felt safe again. Because sometimes, the scariest enemies aren't found on battlefields. Sometimes, they're waiting inside your own home.